offensive terrorists. And that, I think, was one of the most alarming things that has ever happened coming out of Washington. The good news is that there are the sheriffs that are pushing back on this, like Beverly that you talked about, and others in Arizona. And over in New Mexico, I had a chance to see what some of these guys are doing when one of our members, the Dr. Gary Seidel, called us and wanted me to go down and testify in his village of Ruidoso, the ski village, up in the mountains. It's not too far from the border, and although not too far as in terms of New Mexico, I flew into El Paso and drove 3 hours to get to Ruidoso because it was closer than flying into Albuquerque and driving over to Ruidoso. But the mayor there had wanted to ban guns anywhere on village property, and I was interested in going as much as anything because it was going to be an act of civil disobedience, and the people going into the hearing were, many of them, going to be carrying openly, which is legal in New Mexico, and it's protected by the state constitution, which precludes subdivisions of the state from enacting anything to do with gun control. It's pretty clear in that Article 2, Section 6. So I thought that sounded like some fun and went down and testified. Dr. Seidel, I only had a .40 caliber on my hip. Dr. Seidel went in sporting an AR-15 that he was wearing. So he was the most visibly armed of any of us. And it was a very interesting day. And in a subsequent meeting, the council overwhelmingly voted down what the mayor wanted to do. And it was while I was there and with this contact with Dr. Seidel that, well, first of all, I learned that the police chief in the village had been asked to arrest any of us that would come in to the village chamber hall where the hearing was being conducted if we were carrying openly. And the chief said, Mayor, I can't do that. What you're proposing in your edict is
recorded live.
Sorry about that, Larry. Go ahead.
Okay. So that was the kind of police chief that you find there in Ruidoso, and the sheriff was very much of the same mind in the county. And then I learned that in the county south on the border, in Cloudcroft, another village up in the mountains, they were concerned about a forest fire that might consume the village. So the county council had voted to establish an 80,000-acre area for them to manage, to create a fire break, cut a lot of trees down, so that there would be safety for the village. And the Forest Service said, well, you can't do that. And the people said, well, we got to do it. And, well, if you do that, we're going to arrest you, they were told them. Then the sheriff stepped in and said, well, if you arrest any of them, I'm arresting you for false arrest. And you know what? Not only did they cut the trees down, the first two that were cut down were cut by Congressman Steve Pierce, who obviously is a very constitutionally minded member of Congress, and just simply wish we had a lot more of him. When he cut down the first two trees, and they cut those up, sliced them up, and he signed them as souvenirs for people who had been there. So that shows you what a sheriff can do, telling the Forest Service, you're just not going to do what you say you're going to do. There's a sheriff up in, I think it's Josephine County, but it's up in Oregon, and they've got similar concerns, and people want to deal with that land, and the Forest Service had been telling them, well, you can't do that. And the sheriff said, well, yeah, they can. And he's published, Bill Gilbertson is his name. You probably find it just that easy online. 13-page analysis of the law and the Constitution regarding the lack of authority that the Forest Service has.
Now, you mentioned Steve Pierce. Wasn't he just recalled? Hasn't he been removed?
And that's over in Arizona. That's Steve Pierce.
Steve Pierce, I see. Yeah, okay.
The state senator that was recalled, yes.
He was recalled. And
he was.
Sheriff Joe Arpaio is saying that they're going after him next. I've got that up on my site.
Well, anything's possible, but I doubt that that's going to be successful. Arpaio has been there in office for a long time. The guy's 78 years old. He certainly encourages me to think that I'd like to be that hale and hearty when I'm 78 years old.
Yeah, I had a pair signed by him for a lot of years. Fortunately, I never had to wear them, but
that's good.
With Pierce being removed here, I mean the opposition is still heavy. To me, the communist presence is really still here, still viable, still in action, as I just detailed. You know what they wrote back in '63 into the congressional record is happening now. It's still happening now, and if this bill is accurate in the Senate about Americans being able to be detained indefinitely. My God, Larry, this is, we're not talking about socialism here. This is outright communism. Put the people in jail for pointing the finger at the communists.
Well, this is something that we've been dealing with in embryo with the Veterans Disarmament Act, as we call it, where simply with a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder or some sort of finding of incompetence, so that maybe the wife has to be made the one in charge of finances for the family, that would be reason for taking somebody's right to keep and bear arms away. And, I find that very alarming that because a guy doesn't pay his bills on time, they're going to take his right to keep and bear arms away. I don't see the connection. But apparently any reason is a good reason for folks that want to take the right to keep and bear arms away. And I too see the analogy between what we've already been dealing with this present law, the so-called Nix Enhancement Act of 2007, which now members of Congress are trying to repeal happily. But this is very Nazi or Soviet-like. It's something that would enable, on the basis of a suspicion, really, an accusation, a diagnosis, technically. Oh, you've been diagnosed. Sorry, that's it. You've lost your right to keep and bear arms. And from there, I can see them expanding that concept to other areas of accusation, loss of freedom, no due process. And that's the key to what they did in this Nix Enhancement measure, this Veterans Disarmament Act, is that there is no due process. You're not availed the protections of law. The burden of proof is not on the government. They don't have to prove that you're a danger to self or others. And well, you've got a diagnosis, and now you've got to prove to us that you're not a danger to self or others. And in the meantime, you got your guns. Oh, really? I don't think that's going to work in some of these areas. I know that in some of the counties in New Mexico, that kind of nonsense just is not going to be tolerated.
Well, the psychologists in the Soviet Union, they were used against the people, and they were incarcerating people left and right because you think this is a Jewish conspiracy? Well, you must be insane. It was actually almost a capable offense That means they put a gun to your head and pull the trigger if you pointed out that Lenin happened to be Jewish. I mean, you know, or communist. And this is the psychiatry. To me, Larry, if you've been to Vietnam, if you've been to Iraq, if you've been to Afghanistan, and you don't have post-traumatic stress syndrome from fighting an illegal war based on lies and killing innocent people that were never a threat to America, if you don't have post-traumatic stress syndrome, then you are sick. Then there's something wrong with you. Or, you know, you get accepted into Homeland Security or the BATF.
Well, and you've got cops that have post-traumatic stress disorder. You've got firemen that have post-traumatic stress disorder. This is not limited to people that have been on the battlefield. This is something that is post-traumatic stress, and it can happen to really anybody. People that get in an automobile accident, victims of crime. So to say that somehow we should lose our civil liberties because of this kind of post-traumatic stress, that makes me rather stressed.
Now, one other thing, you know, I really haven't made any secret of this, but 40 years ago I was arrested in Texas for marijuana when marijuana was a life sentence. And I went down to try to get my rights restored with the BATF, and I was informed that that department had been closed. So does that mean that the probably 40 million people that have been arrested for marijuana sometime, and they've done it, now we've made some progress with the medical marijuana, but they are trying to say if you've applied for medical marijuana, oh, you're not allowed to own guns either. I mean,
you would have had that kind of a sentence that would have been more than a year in jail for whatever reason, then you lose your right to keep and bear arms. That's something that I think has to be thought through again, because somebody that has committed a nonviolent crime, say an embezzler, like, you know, he didn't use a gun, he's not a bank robber, he didn't go in and threaten anybody's life. He did something wrong and he had to pay for it, but to say that he can't protect himself for the rest of his life, I don't think so. That doesn't make any sense at all. So we've gone way overboard in the way we punish people, saying that, well, God may forgive, but we don't.
That department's been closed. We can't help you.
It's been closed down because Senator Charles Schumer every year gets an amendment in the appropriations measure for the Justice Department that denies any funding for that office.
All right, Larry Pratt, I appreciate you being on my show. I'm looking forward to have you back. You know, hopefully next time you come on my show, we'll have better news for people. We'll make some progress here. Although, you know, I mean, it's getting more difficult. It's heating up more, Larry. But
well, there's a lot going on, that's for sure.
Gun Owners of America, the link's up on my website, and Larry, if you let people know about this show, I'd really appreciate it. It was recorded and totally on Blog Talk Radio, so the link under your name there will take us there. But God bless you. Thank you for your work. You're certainly appreciated over here.
Thanks, Ray. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Call recording has been completed.
Wow. What a pain in the ass that was. Alright. Well, that was Larry Pratt. And we did get it recorded. Most of it. I think I'll stop now.